Right. I'm using my teacher voice, and it sounded like it was big enough for the room, but apparently not. But anyway, good morning. We're going to begin the March IAC meeting, and I'd like to start off by thanking everybody for attending today. Very rainy and foggy out there. A lot of challenges with traffic, so thank you for being here. We are going to begin with any revisions to the agenda?
Madam Chair, no revisions.
All right, great. So we're going to look first to the consent agenda, and if I could have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, consent agenda passes, and now we move to facility status changes, and that's in pages 120 and 121 of your notebook. And Michael, I think you're going to present this section. Welcome. Good morning.
Okay, those of you recall, I think it was December, we had a couple of site approvals for Baltimore County, which we ended up taking off of the agenda because in our final preparations recognized that the Baltimore County Board of Education had not yet approved the sites, which is a kind of a formality since they were in the planning stages, but that's one of our requirements. So the first two items are related to two projects that are in the CIP. The first one for Northeast Area Elementary School, number 2 at Ridge Road, and the second for Northeast Area Middle School. They're both in northeast Baltimore County.
Okay. Any questions for Michael? All right, would you read the motion?
Sure. The first motion is to approve the use by the Baltimore County Board of Education of 19.22 acres at the northeast corner of Rossfield Boulevard and Gum Spring Road in Baltimore County, Maryland, for the construction of a future elementary school to serve the northeast area of Baltimore County, adhering to the actions identified in the State Clearinghouse Review State Identifier number 2018-0329-0203.
All right, any questions on the motion? We have a motion to approve. We have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries. All right, we'll do
Okay.
the next one, Michael.
Great. The second one is to approve the use by the Baltimore County Board of Education of 29.79 acres at the north side of King Avenue between Interstate 95 and Stapleford Road in Baltimore County, Maryland, for the construction of a future middle school to serve the northeast area of Baltimore County, adhering to the actions identified in the State Clearinghouse Review State Identifier number 2018-0329-0204.
All right, any questions on this? All right, do we have a motion to approve? So, okay, we have a second?
Second.
All right, motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries. All right, the next one, Michael.
Okay, the third item is a property transfer in Prince George's County for the Linden Hill Elementary School, which is being surplused by the county schools. It's a former storage facility. This is a new item,
Okay,
but I think the information is there, so unless anybody has any questions, I can go ahead with the motion.
are there any questions on this item? All right, go ahead with the motion.
Okay. For this one, it's to approve the transfer by the Prince George's County Board of Education of the former Linden Hill Elementary School of 16.243 acres, made up of 9 adjacent parcels located at 6181 Old Central Avenue in Capitol Heights, Maryland, to the Prince George's County government so that the county government may dispose of the property as surplus. Approval of the property disposition will occur at a future IAC meeting once the disposal method is determined.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All right, and do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. All right, and then you have one other item.
Right, so the final, as you all know, we do need to bring some of the easements that don't require formal approval to you, just as informational items. So we do have 4 of them this month, 3 in Montgomery County and 1 in St. Mary's County. either right-of-way, utility easements, or forest conservation.
Any questions for Michael on these easements? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, now we move to section 3 in the handbook, which is disposal of state-owned relocatables, and that's Kim Spivey. Good morning, Kim.
Oh, good morning. So the item before you is the disposal of a state-owned relocatable. At the end of calendar year 2018, there were 122 classrooms in state-owned relocatable buildings. 108 are used for instructional purposes, 10 for non-instructional purposes, and 4 are vacant in just 8 local school systems. The state-owned buildings were purchased in the early 70s, 80s, and 90s. This item is for the disposal by demolition of the 47-year-old state-owned relocatable classroom located at Sharpsburg Elementary in Washington County. The relocatable classroom is located where construction activities are scheduled to be installed during the summer of 2019. Based on the current condition, age, anticipated cost to renovate or relocate the building, and the necessity to maintain the construction schedule of the replacement school on this site, the IAC staff recommend approval of the demolition. Washington County Public Schools will take responsibility for the cost to demolish. So, are there any questions?
Any questions for Kim on this? If anybody wants to see a picture of this building, Bob will pass it around, but it's not too good looking. In some places, they call these learning cottages, but this one is far from that, so.
It served a great purpose
Right.
at the time where we had to
Right.
house students very, very quickly. It should have been intended as a temporary solution. You'll see as we look at the picture, and we can share it with the audience later, we haven't too many of these out there that we need to properly house the students in permanent facilities.
Right.
These do need to go.
And there is a DGS disposal process, which we will follow up with after the IAC takes action on this item. And I can read the motion.
Yes, would you please? Thank you.
To approve the disposal of a state-owned relocatable classroom building number 533-3 located at Sharpsburg Elementary in Washington County in accordance with the requirements set forth by the State of Maryland Department of General Services.
All right, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, now we're going to move to section 4, which has to do with change orders. And Kim, you're on for that one as well, so section A first.
Okay, so this one is an informational change order for the FY 2018 Aging Schools Program. Aging Schools Program is 100% state funding, so you'll see in this item that we are participating 100% in this change order for the contaminated soil removal. This has been reviewed by DGS, and they recommend approval.
Okay, thank you.
And
So item B?
And item B is also informational and doesn't require an IAC action, but the IAC staff, in accordance with the enactment of House Bill 1783 and the IAC adoption of the policy related to change order review and available project contingencies, sent letters to the 24 school systems and Maryland School for the Blind. The letter requested that the local school systems and Maryland School for the Blind acknowledge their understanding of the change to the IAC staff review of change orders, determine disposition of project contingencies, and request DGS change orders would be considered as locally funded. This item represents the responses from 7 of the local school systems that have indicated that the outstanding change orders will be locally funded. We have received a response from all local school systems with the exception of one who's out of the office this month, but we intend to report the determinations of the remaining local school systems at the IAC meeting in April. And I would like to give Carrie Wiskman in my office, our administrator, accolades for taking care of this task. It was quite a big one. There were several projects that had outstanding change orders.
Certainly can see that.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you noticed, but back in the consent item in section E, there was approximately $2.5 million that was in project contingencies that now will be recycled for the CIP and other
That's good.
projects, active projects.
That's a positive thing.
Yes.
Very good.
So,
Any
yeah.
questions for Kim on this detail for change orders? All right, seeing none, thank you very much. We'll now move on to the Baltimore City cancellation of the 2018 CIP projects and amendment of the fiscal year 2019 CIP. And welcome to Jamie, and we're now in section 5.
Good morning, thank you.
Good morning.
Before I get started, I want to draw your attention to some source materials. Attachment 1 is on page 184 of the agenda, and attachment 2 is on page 181. I also want to ask some source professionals to come up and join me from Baltimore City Public Schools Operations. Dr. Lynette Washington, the acting COO, and Cindy Smith, the Director of Design and Construction.
Welcome and good morning. Thank you for being here.
Just to kick it off with some background information, in a letter dated January 21, the CEO of Baltimore City Public Schools provided an update to the Board of Public Works on the air conditioning plan. At the time of its production, the cost to install the the air conditioners was not known due to the extent of the scope for electrical upgrades. The update provides some justification on the increased price because, as I said, the extent was not known of those electrical upgrades. Bottom line, the vertical package air conditioning units, which cost $20,000, generally cost about $40,000 to $50,000 to be installed. Most of that additional cost is attributable to electrical upgrades. Despite this additional cost, the city still considers VPUs to be the best solution because VPUs will require the same electrical upgrades as the window air conditioning units. VPUs both cool and heat. VPUs meet code and standards requirements. Importantly, a standard for ventilation, fresh air intake. And VPUs also have a lower total cost of ownership because they have a longer life and run more efficiently. In response to this letter, we met with the city and came up with this agenda item in order to deliver as many of these projects as quickly as possible so that kids in city schools would have good climate control. So at this time, we are doing an agenda item as per the letter dated March 4, requesting approval of 13 vertical package unit projects in the CIP from 2018 and 19 to be canceled and to transfer the funds to the statewide contingency reserve for Baltimore City. And also at this time, the city would like to request approval to amend the FY 2020 CIP to include the 7 highest priority projects that are being canceled. Approval of this motion would allow the BCPSS to deliver its 7 highest priority projects, shaded in green on the table, and improve conditions in 278 classrooms. The 2 projects shaded in red will not be resubmitted, as more detailed scoping revealed that Windsor Hills would be better served by expanding the reach of the chiller that is in place there, and that is going to be done through the extra $15 million for HVAC program. And Brems Lane, also through additional scoping, it was revealed that the repair of the equipment that's currently in place would be a more cost-effective solution. The 4 projects shaded in yellow, the second priority projects will be moved ahead in the 2021 CIP. Staff recommends this approval. I will say, in brief, that there's quite a difference between $20,000 and $40,000, and so it's a good question to ask why. The need was known per the 102.2 submitted for the CIPs. The extent was not known, and for that reason, you have to look at the low capital match available to Baltimore City in order to avoid spending their capital dollars on projects that will not move forward. Baltimore City Public Schools does not initiate design until funds have been allocated for construction. What that means is because we allocate funds based on a cost estimate, and we set the maximum state construction allocation based on a cost estimate submitted for approval for that allocation, we are approving projects based on a cost estimate from planning, whereas LEAs that have more money and are able to spend that on design on the front side take off their cost estimates from detailed design documents. So we've observed continuous improvement from Baltimore City Public Schools and respect a lot of what they do. It would be very difficult to hit the nail right on the head, given the buildings are very old and they are unique in both in their design, both in how they look and how they what are they asked to do. So so we should not be surprised that that there is that the mark was missed on this one. But this agenda item will help these projects get put in place as quickly as possible. So I would ask for any questions before I read a motion.
Secretary Churchill.
Good morning. Thank you for that report. And good to see you here this morning as well. Thank you for joining. First, I'm going to state, of course, that General Services will do whatever is, can offer whatever help that we can bring to bear on your challenging situation. And we continue to have conversations, and so keep these conversations in mind. 278 classrooms will be covered by this approval. How many classrooms remain for future projects? Or how many schools? I'm assuming from the literature it's 48, but I'm not clear.
I don't have classroom counts. So we'd have to follow back up. I don't think we have the number with us on hand.
Okay. And in your schedule, there was one school, I think it was Thurgood Marshall, that was scheduled in 22 to be brought online. Most of these projects were in 19. What's the gap between 19 and 22? It's on page
187.
97?
I believe 187.
187. Thank you.
So this list is a list with, that list you're looking at is the list of underutilized buildings. So that list is, those schools are funded with our general funds anyway, not through the CIP. We have several other projects that are actually 2022 projects as well. It's just that they're divided into the other list
Okay.
for CIP projects.
Based on your current design rationale, when do you project that all schools would have air conditioning?
And so I think it's more so based on funding availability. So as we said before, many of the other projects, because of the cost that was realized, will be moved back. So it's based off of our ability to fund them with all of our other systemic projects in our CIPs.
Well, thank you. And if you would just look into that and respond back, because the problem is great. We understand that, and we should be looking at all options to be able to help you in that respect. So.
And I do want to say that I do appreciate the support that Clarence has provided us. He's also come out and sent staff to visit some of our sites, so I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes. Other questions? Secretary.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This is not being critical of how we present the information. I'm just looking for the potential for improving how the information is presented. We see the two charts in our work, and we see the green coloring to try to distinguish what's happening.
Sure.
And then those schools all go to the next chart. But in other places, we're provided information on that number of schools and the number of classrooms. And if that's a metric we want to keep our eye on, perhaps that ought to be presented on the chart every time, that we have total number of schools that are targeted, numbers that will be completed, and then number of classrooms. We could track both of those things if we can see that. My suggestion might be if we turn this chart sideways, we'd be able to put the number of classrooms in there, and we'd also be able to layer in the amount that's being kind of rescinded to us, and the amount that was the new target amount. I mean, I did all that on my piece of paper, to try to compare what was the original estimate, what was the actual cost now. But if we can compare the two side by side, it may give us more information at a glance. That's just a presentation of information. It's no discredit about the work. It's just sharing some of my process as I evaluate it. And if that would help anybody else, that's the suggestion I would make. All right.
Secretary McCourt, thank you. Appreciate you looking at it closely as well. So we will revise this and bring it back in the future with
Sure,
projects,
sure.
just as you've suggested.
That's a
I
great,
would be happy to open up, unhide my columns and
there you go.
show you the table. No
That's right.
problem. I'm just trying to keep it simple, but
I understand
I
that.
want you to have more.
I don't need absolutely everything, but the things that the things that we would normally compare one against the other should be appearing one against the other. And then if our goal is to try to get all the schools done, and we can look at how many classrooms are getting done each time, we could do that, yes.
I think that's really helpful.
It might be easy to do that at a glance.
And you know, we might get questions from people that we run into about that, so it would be helpful to know that.
And
Okay.
Madam Chair and Secretary, we can provide the summary information, which is easier for some in order to make decisions, and then provide the backup with a lot more detail so that
Right.
we can reference it. I think we can do both.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Great, thank you for
That's all
that.
I have. Thank you.
Other questions for Jamie? All right, will you read the motion?
Sure will. The motion is to approve a request from Baltimore City Public Schools to first cancel 13 projects, 3 FY 2018 CIP projects and 10 FY 2019 CIP projects, and transfer $8,494,000 to the statewide contingency account reserves for Baltimore City Public Schools. And two, to amend the FY 2020 CIP to include 7 projects and allocate $10,569,357 from the statewide contingency account reserves for Baltimore City Public Schools to fund those projects.
All right, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. All right. You want to go on?
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. The next item on the agenda is a status update on the extra $15 million for HVAC projects. Just a little background. In April 2018, when Governor Hogan approved Senate Bill 186, he approved an appropriation for an extra $15 million for HVAC improvements in Baltimore City Public Schools. In May, we worked with the city schools to determine an appropriate allocation process. In August, we approved a waiver of certain COMAR regulations to support the program. In September, we published a website to receive submissions, and in December, we approved our first round of projects. To date, we have allocated $14,825,450. That is 98.8% of the funds available. As of March 19, 2019, construction has been completed, and the project is operational at Harlem Park Building. And then if you would flip to the second page. Just a few notes on that. There are 6 projects that do not require design. That is for small equipment installation and parts replacement. Because these projects don't need design, design review has not been needed either. Of those projects, as I said, one of them is operational at this point. One project is under construction at this point, and 4 projects are to begin within the next few weeks. All in all, those 6 projects will all be operational. It is anticipated by June. So that's good, quick work on those projects. The remaining 17, 8 have already been moved to design procurement. So they're looking to get professional services on board, and 9 of which have progressed to schematic design. So they have design consultants on board and are moving forward. So this is the last report. I think we had 4 projects moving ahead. One was bid opening. So there's been a lot of progress since then.
Great. Again, this is helpful to have this information and keeps us updated on the progress, which we can see. Questions for Jamie on any of this information? All right, thank you all very much for your presentation, and thank you for Baltimore City for being here today. All right, we're going to.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could?
Sure.
As you're looking at this pullout, I'd appreciate any feedback. This is kind of a foreshadow of where we're going to be going with project status for every one of our projects. There'll be, we get our business management system in place, then we'll be able to provide both what the plan project outcomes are as far as milestones, and then how the projects are actually laying against that, how that we are providing them. This will give you the ability to know what's moving as it should and what's not, so that you can focus your attention on those that are not.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, now we're going to move to Section 7, and that is the round 2 of our school safety grant program applications, and we'll welcome Deputy Director Joan Schaefer to discuss those.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So before you today are the recommended procedures for the second round of the FY 2019 Security Fund. So it's the second 10 million. We're looking for approval of our recommendations or comments back, and we're also then asking, once they are approved, for release of these funds. So I don't want to spend too much time. You've been through this. You know what this program is about. I will say that the attached procedures are very similar to the previous first round, but there are a couple of notable exceptions. The first round, similarly to the first round, the state, the allocations for the individual LEAs are based on both enrollment and square footage. However, the difference is that we put a floor of 200,000 for the LEA, so they do not go below that. And we also took away the need for a local share. So these will all be these will be totally state funded. If you want to discuss any of this further,
I just want to say,
questions?
Joan and Kate Hessian and I presented information about the status of all the grants, both from the school safety side and from the IAC side, at the PZAM, the superintendent's monthly meeting at the beginning of the month, and they were very appreciative of getting some clarification. We had good discussion, and then Zach Hands worked on and Kate worked on and Joan, a spreadsheet to show the differences in the grant, so we could make sure everybody knew what they could spend their money on. And, you know, in larger systems, superintendents aren't as involved in those kinds of decisions as they are in the smaller systems. So it was really helpful to have their attention, and we had 22 out of the 24 superintendents there. And I've gotten great feedback from the superintendents about that meeting, and thanking us for making those clarifications. So I really applaud the decision of the staff to really look at this as state grants. We've got a lot of situations in the counties, as I'm doing my visits, where the local match was just not there, and so this will be helpful. The other feedback I've received is many, many thanks to us for setting a minimum amount for each county, because some of the smaller counties like Kent and Garrett, those counties, you know, would really lose out if we just did a per pupil. So, like we did at the school safety sub-cabinet, we made a minimum of 200,000, and so I think this makes a lot of sense. I just wanted to kind of put my approval in there in case somebody was wondering why we changed that particular aspect for this round of 10 million.
Yes.
Madam Chair, if I could.
Yes.
We understood the 200,000 as a possible difficulty in the beginning, and as well as the state share.
Right.
Because all of our needs in the state far outweigh the available funds. The revolving fund is actually something that's still being talked about within the legislature. Baltimore City, their design problems, you know, possibly this could help them to move things forward better because of lack of share. But what we wanted to learn, because this is so new, what is important for safety? We found that there was a lot of hesitancy amongst the LEAs understanding what they should spend it on. Very
Right.
important decision. We did study. We believe that by not putting the floor in and having a state-local share, that it would cause a lot of forethought from the LEAs as they made these decisions. And here we found that once not everybody was ready to submit, and you're going to see in the next section, but once they began to see what everybody else was doing,
Right.
it helped to make those decisions more concrete and defendable. So I think it served the purpose, and now going forward, we'll make it easier, but we needed their help.
Exactly. And interestingly enough, I was at Bohemian Manor Middle School and High School, which is a joint campus, on Monday, and they are finishing up their new secure entrance. And it would, for that particular one, they funded it through the county, but they're doing others using our grant money to fund other buildings in Cecil County to have their secure entrances. So I'm being able to see this working across the state, so it's really, really good that we're able to do this.
It was interesting to see a number of the LEAs had their projects lined up early on, but then there were others who really did say they were having difficulty coming
Right.
up with that local match.
Exactly, yeah.
So,
So go ahead, Joan.
do you have any other questions? I'm happy to answer.
Madam Chair, just-
Secretary,
Oh, sorry. You were-
no, go right ahead,
Just,
Bob.
just want to follow up on understanding the minimum allocation. The minimum allocation is available to each school once they present a project, or it's granted to each school whether they have the project?
It's available to each LEA
Well, okay.
and to
Each LEA, right. To disperse throughout their system.
as they see fit.
Okay.
And as Mr. Gorel said, we investigated this a lot, and we could not find any real definitive, high-priority, top-of-the-list projects that we would essentially tell the LEAs they needed to take a hard look at. So in the end, it is up to the LEAs. They determine what they need. And truthfully, all the LEAs do have different situations and different needs. That answer your question?
Yeah,
Secretary McCord, if I could, there is one more point of difference here, and that is, as we got to the end, we have realized we might have some balances, and that this is an ongoing program. So we made it very clear in this application that if they don't apply, on your point, they are eligible for $200,000. So we'll put that out as well as the per pupil that gives them the
Goes on top
calculation.
of
But
it.
if they don't ask for any projects, then that will revert back in the next cycle to go into the general pool to disperse to the rest of the LEAs. In other words, they'll have to compete for it the same as everybody else. It's not something that will retain and carry forward.
You've answered the second question before I got a chance to ask it. Thank you.
Very
Thank you.
good. Secretary Churchill.
I don't have a question. I just want to take a moment, Madam Chair, and commend Joan on your effort in shepherding this process. You've been a great cheerleader, and I think you've been probably a great resource for the LEAs, and the success in this shows, and so we should give you credit for what you've done with the program. Thank you.
If you don't mind, I'd like to
Yes,
add to that.
Secretary McCord.
I would like to echo that. I'm not trying to be critical. A $200,000 minimum is $4.8 million of $10 million. That's almost half of that we're making sure somebody gets something, and we're trusting that it gets done the right way. And if it gets reverted because they don't spend it, I'm good with that. I appreciate all your efforts. I do. Thank you.
Okay,
good.
thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Joan.
Would you like me to read the motion?
Yes, please.
Okay, there are 3 parts.
Okay.
The motion is to approve the draft School Safety Grant Program Administrative Procedures Guide pending any non-substantive edits by staff if we find any typos, that kind of thing. To direct staff to solicit school safety grant program projects from LEAs and the Maryland School for the Blind with a maximum total allocation of $10 million. Each LEA's distribution will be based on a combination of their proportion of total enrollment and their proportion of total facility square footage, with every LEA receiving a minimum allocation of $200,000. And last, to delegate authority to approve eligible projects within the total LEA allocation to IAC staff and IAC designees, with a report of project allocation submitted to the IAC at regularly scheduled meetings.
Very good. So 3 parts of that motion. Do we have a motion
So moved.
All right, and do we have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion. Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. All right, Joan, report of where we are with some of these projects.
Okay, if you turn to page 210, this is the informational item that we provide to you at every meeting. Unfortunately, from the time we print this to the time we have the meeting, a lot happens, and especially with this program, and especially at the end of the whole cycle. So what we are doing is handing out a new summary page. And it's as of this morning, and you can see it's quite a bit updated. So what you can see on this sheet is that we are waiting for requests from 2 LEAs. One of them is Carroll County. They know exactly what they want, but they they did due diligence, and they received estimates, and they found out that it was too much, so they are lowering the number of schools they're going to submit, and most likely they will submit tomorrow. They have all the information. And it's for additional bi-directional amplifiers, by the way, so that's how I know what they're doing. The other LEA is Howard County. Their funding balance has not yet been requested either, and right now they are searching for the local funds so that they can submit. They have had a difficulty finding those funds. The lines that are in yellow are systems that either have projects pending approval or they are in the process of submitting yesterday and today and probably tomorrow. So I am hopeful that we will, by the end of next week, we will have all of this resolved and all of the allocations will be determined.
Great. Any questions for Joan on the projects and the updates?
Just one other thing,
Sure.
it's kind of interesting with Baltimore County, their submission is in process, but they have a lot of projects to submit. They're doing door hardware, because they have 1.2 million, basically. They have door hardware at a number of schools that they're submitting for, and they're also doing these quick-release security shades at their classroom windows. So I think I'm expecting about 100 schools for
Right.
that.
Great. Other questions for Joan? Thank you very much. Appreciate the update.
My pleasure.
All right, and now we'll have our legislative update from Cassandra.
Madam Chair, members, we have around 2.5 weeks until session ends. There have been a number of bills that have been introduced that could impact our program. So far, none of those have entirely passed the General Assembly. Since your tracker was published, there's been one item of note, House Bill 727, which is the cross-file of Senate Bill 731, did pass the House and has crossed over to the Senate. That would have a number of implications for our agency if it were to pass. At the next meeting, we will be able to report out all of the bills that pass both houses in the General Assembly. Of course, then the governor still has to sign those. The latest date that action might be taken would be May 28th. Briefly, just looking forward into next year, House Bill 1783 did establish the EdSpec work group and the funding work group. The EdSpec work group is currently in the process of meeting. The funding work group will convene soon upon the completion of the assessment. So it is likely that we will have a much bigger year next year than we did this year. And I will stand for questions.
Questions for Cassandra on the legislative session, which we are all looking forward to being over. Did I say that? Yeah. Someone seconded. By the way, I just announced yesterday to the staff here, and you all are welcome to come if you'd like. We're having an ice cream social on April 11th at like 1:30, and I'm going to be dipping ice cream, so if anybody wants to
I'm
come by
definitely
for
coming.
a sundae, you are welcome to join us because we're celebrating the end of session and thanking our employees for working extra hard. So certainly the IAC group is invited too. and
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll be having fun up there on the 8th floor, so please join us. Any other business to come before the IAC today?
Madam Chair, if I could,
Yes.
please. You've mentioned how much work it takes, particularly during the session. We get very distracted, and that means everybody plays a role. Carrie was represented earlier for all the work she has done. Shantia, like on the safety projects, is on the phone constantly, trying to pull these things together. I also would like to introduce David Fries. He is our new maintenance manager.
Hi,
He
David.
is very experienced. He's a critical thinker. He practices the lean manufacturing processes, understands it well, which is a process of continuous improvement. You never get to the end. You're constantly making it better. He's an engineer by background, so we're very pleased and very blessed to have him. Thank you.
Welcome, David. All right, anything else? All right, I'll entertain a motion to conclude our meeting today. All right, do we have a second?
Second?
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carried. Thank you, everyone, for attending today.